You're listening to The Green Flag with your hosts, Lukas Wacker and Kyle Cushman.
"2023 is here. The Clash is come and gone. Daytona is next. And you know what that means? We're back for our preseason predictions. And this is for mostly the NASCAR Cup Series, but we're going to put in our Xfinity and Truck
Sprinkle
Champion.
in a little bit extra.
Early picks. We're not going to do the championship four. We'll just do a little bit of a taste for you and see how wrong we are in about 10 months' time. So longest season basically in all professional sports. And it is going to be a fun 2023 season, no doubt. So first off, how are you doing today, Kyle, after an offseason that felt, I think, relatively quick? Like, I think this is one of the quicker off seasons I have personally felt in quite some time.
It's strange. At the beginning, it feels like it's forever. And then it gets to this point, and you're like, what? Weren't we just racing like last week? Like, I don't know. I'm pumped for this season, though. I mean, yeah, technically, yes, we were. So there's that. But no, I'm super, super excited for this season. All the different storylines, whether it be driver movement, teams moving up and down the grid, drivers coming back into the series on part-time basis, or just the fact that it's the second year of the next-gen car and whether we'll see as much parity as we did previously or if a team will step up or whatever happens. There's a lot to really, really be excited about this season at the Cup Series level, and that's not even to mention the exciting stuff happening at the Xfinity Series level and the intriguing storylines deeper down the ladder system as well. So I'm super excited to be previewing the season. Excited to be so incredibly wrong today. But you know what? Wouldn't have it any other way.
No, neither would I. This is always one of the best episodes we do. It's the most fun because we just can look back on this, especially when you look at, when we do our playoff previews, how different it was, especially last year. I mean, you could not have predicted what 2022 had in store with the amount of parity we had, amount of different winners we had.
Like we thought there would be parity, but to the extent that we had it was
almost record breaking.
Unreal.
Yeah. I couldn't have thought that. And then you didn't really have a breakaway candidate either. And throughout all of that, it kept the playoffs wide open. You didn't know who was really going to be the favorite. And I think Joey Logano winning the championship proved that. He wasn't even the favorite going into the championship race. Nobody really had an idea that would be who would be hoisting the trophy at the end of it, but he did. He's a defending two-time champion now. So this is going to be an interesting season if he can repeat. It has not been done in the current playoff format era. So, read into that what you will. But as per usual, we've got our categories. We've got most wins. Who's going to finish with the most wins season long, not just regular season? Who's going to finish with the most wins? Underdog winner pick. Who's going to be flying under the radar this season, but could surprise pre or post or in the playoffs for a victory? First time winners. There's not as many options this time around because everyone won last year. Yeah. So it's very limited. So we'll see if there are any people in that category for either of us. A surprise driver of the year, the biggest disappointment of the year, a bounceback driver candidate, the rookie of the year battle, which is actually very intriguing this year. We'll see how Noah Gragson and Ty Gibbs shape up here because, of course, that's 1 and 2 in Xfinity points last season, coming right down to the wire in Phoenix. And then a regular season champion, who's going to get the 15 extra playoff points going into the final 10 races. We will try, emphasis on try, to predict 16 of the playoff guys who we think is going to be competing for the title.
Which is not going to go well.
No. I think we can get about 12 is basically, I think, our average. And then the final 4 spots are always a toss-up based off of a random winner. Yeah. Our championship 4 for the Cup Series, the Cup champion, the Xfinity champion, and the Truck Series champion, newly or formally Craftsman now, I guess, is however you want to word that. Yeah. It's back to Craftsman. So we'll have the red.
I'm sure Mr. Nostalgia over here loves that.
Well, I can't wait for it to be. I don't know if I can say if I would want it to be nationwide or the Busch Series. I feel like nationwide.
For the era that we grew up in, it should be nationwide.
Yeah, but it's just because of the name Busch. That's why. Because it is the Busch Series. Because at the point of we're recording this, Kyle Busch has announced that he is racing in 5 Xfinity Series races. Teed you up perfect for that.
Are we like not even 5 minutes into recording and I almost already swore at you for a Kyle Busch thing?
I'm not surprised. It's going to be a long season.
Oh, boy.
So those are the categories. We've done this before, and we're ready to do it again. So I think we start off with most wins here, Kyle. I mean, it's fairly straightforward. We got to see how many wins we think they're going to get to involved in that. Just make a really lazy prediction because it's literally just a shot in the dark. But who do you have winning the most races in the NASCAR Cup Series in 2023?
So I think for starters, some context for last year, Chase Elliott had the most wins with 5, which was quite a bit of a drop off from Kyle Larson winning 10, was it the previous year?
Yeah. And one of Chase's wins was by 2 guys.
Yeah, exactly.
So
if not for that, it would have been a tie for 4 with the champion Logano. I think this all depends on what you think is going to happen this year in terms of if the parity continues or if there's a team or a manufacturer or a driver that have just figured out this car and can go on a run similar to what Larson did a couple of years ago. To be fair, I think Larson's season at this point is underrated in terms of how historically dominant it was. I think in 5-10 years, we're going to look back at that and go, holy smokes. But all that taken into consideration, I have Christopher Bell winning the most races this season. And do you want me to put a number on it as well? Are we putting a number on it? I will say he wins 6 races. So a little bit more than I like that laugh already because I think I know where this is going. I really like Christopher Bell this year after what he showed the second half of last year. I think Toyota is going to be a manufacturer to seriously watch this year. I think that especially with the stable that they have, there is not a weak link in that garage except for maybe the rookie Ty Gibbs. And if he figures out this car quickly, you've got basically every Toyota in the field has a realistic shot at making the playoffs here.
Yeah.
But in Christopher Bell, I love that mix that they've got going on. I know your boy Adam Stevens there as well. But I think 6 wins is that number where I think we get a little bit more dominance from the top echelon this season, but not so much so from one specific driver that we see them pull away. So taking all that into consideration, some of the regular season races that Bell is always great at, you can pencil it or you can pen him into a win at New Hampshire. And especially the way that his playoffs went last year, I think 6 is a solid number to shoot for Bell this season.
Same old story. I mean, you could not write it any better.
The best part is that I switched it to Bell last night too.
I have Christopher Bell. I kid you not, with 6 wins as well.
Great minds.
Yeah, really. How wrong is that going to be? I hope not.
Oh, it's going to be. He's going to win 0 races now.
The thing about Bell last year was that he won 2 races on tracks that he realistically hasn't been good on. So if he can execute on the tracks that he is really, really good at this year, then I can see him bumping up the win total. I don't know if he'll get it. Like the circumstances played perfectly for him at Martinsville and at the Roval in the playoffs, obviously. But if he can continue, maybe getting a sneak win at one of his, lesser tracks and just continue that progression on tracks that he is very, very skilled at, I think that Toyota will figure this car out a little bit better this year. They struggled on the road courses last year. I know he got a win on one, but if Toyota can get semi-close, because I think Chevrolet has got everything they need to really hammer home the road course package. The short tracks, Toyotas were kind of iffy on last year, was kind of a hit or miss. And, I think Bell is a decent short track racer, but I really like him on obviously the high line tracks that, on the 1.5 miles. So Kansas is one that really comes to mind. That's his first Xfinity win back in the day too. So,
well, speaking of the short tracks, he almost snagged that win at the second Richmond race as well. So
yeah.
Those are a couple there right away. If Toyota's better on the road courses, which I don't know how they could get worse, I really like Bell out of that stable of drivers. Obviously, Tyler Reddick being the new addition there is going to be the guy to watch.
Gibbs is a shout too on a road course.
That's fair. He did. But Christopher Bell has 2 wins already on road courses in his career.
Yeah.
He was a runner-up at Road America as well. Those are some really solid. Like his first ever win came at the Daytona road course. So this is a guy to definitely be a threat at road courses. And if Toyota brings a much better package, then that could be a win or 2 that you're looking at there. And all of a sudden that win total bloats up from 3 to 6, maybe even more.
Yeah, I'll tell you, if Adam Stevens can figure out the car even more so this year, it could be game over. I'm serious. Like, I love that guy. He's so good. But the 20 car is not going to be the afterthought of that team anymore. They're going to step up and really take the reins, I think, this year. Not to say that Hamlin or Truex or Gibbs won't be competitive. I just think Bell will emerge as the guy after what he finished off last season. I don't know if he really even had the best shot, considering all the circumstances that happened in Phoenix, to even go out there and contend for the title that day. Maybe this year is a year that they do it for Coy. They did it for JD back in 2019. I could see them doing it again here this season. So we'll see if Christopher Bell can get 6 wins and have the most, because that's what we're thinking. Next up, Underdog winner pick. Oh man, this is an interesting one. We had a brief discussion before the race before the show.
I wanted some clarification. Before the race, definitely.
Sorry.
He's got Irish on the mind. Yeah, there we go. Oh man.
That was the first drop of the year.
Do we even know
Feels good.
what episode the Out to Toast is from? I need to find that clip.
We really do. That'll be going on social.
Anyways, I wanted some clarification as to whether AJ Allmendinger on a road course counted, because I think AJ Allmendinger winning in general is an underdog pick, but specifically because of his prowess on the road courses, I don't think he is, and we agreed on that. So I swiped that away. I'll spoil a little bit for later. I do have him winning on a road course this season.
Hey.
But do you want me to lead off on this one, or do you want to take this?
You can go. We'll just keep going like that.
This is a tough one because there's so many people that can win races, as we saw last year.
This is the most competitive I feel like it's been, really. I know people say that in the media generally, but I think it's honestly harder this year to predict because of how much parity there was last year. And it showed that there's a lot of guys in this garage that can win races. It's not just, we can get a sneaky top 5. No, they legitimately won races. And that's not including a guy like Michael McDowell that could sneak a super speedway win. There's a lot of guys that even didn't win last year that you would argue could have.
Absolutely. My underdog winner, though, I'm going
I swear to God, if we have the same one.
I think we might. I don't know. We'll see. I'm going to the Legacy Motor Club, though, with Mr. Eric Jones. It's been widely known how much we love Eric Jones on this show.
Yes.
We think he's supremely
TGF
talented. Guy. He is absolutely the TGF driver if we're to start a Cup Series team and win the lottery and all that stuff. It is too basic to pick him at Darlington because he won there last year. He's been fantastic there in his career. Shout out to the Eric Jones Darlington fantasy pick, by the way, to myself.
9th overall.
Yeah, I know. The 9th overall, it was great. It worked out for everyone. I will have him winning instead at Pocono. It's been another track that's been really good for him in his career. And I think just taking all things into consideration, the bigger tracks, the 1.5 mile plus is where we see a little bit more variance. I think some of the more specialty tracks are where the specific drivers come out, whether that be road courses and specific teams or specific drivers, or some of the short tracks where it's kind of more the few guys that We know Eric Jones and stuff like that at Darlington. Pocono is another one of those tracks that's been really good in his career. I'll say he pulls one out at the Tricky Triangle, and Eric Jones picks up a win. And of course, with that means that he books his ticket to the playoffs, assuming there isn't more than 16 winners in the regular season.
That it does. Hey, I love me an Eric Jones shout. Love me it. I have gone with a guy that was a big name, maybe with his new role has taken a slight step back in people's eyes. I have gone with a team that did not make the Clash. I'm going with Brad Keselowski to win a race this year for RFK at Talladega.
Nice.
Super good super speedway racer. Yeah. As we all know, Roush has always brought the speed.
Well, they swept the duels last year, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And I think that Daytona is obviously an ambitious shout to say that you're going to win Daytona. either or because of how much of a wreck fest both of those races could potentially be.
Just the importance of both races too, right? The Daytona 500
exactly.
or the regular season finale. So
lots on the line. I just think Talladega is a place that he has had more success in his career in general as well. And I could see him getting the victory there. I'm going to go with the spring Talladega race as well. Let's clear that up. I'm not going with the fall.
Wow.
I think Brad Keselowski punches his ticket to the playoffs with a victory there. And I don't know if they'll necessarily be there on speed, but he was, as you mentioned last year, one of the more consistent guys in the final 10 weeks. And right up there, he was I think the highest non-playoff guy in points that scored in those 10 races, if I remember correctly. But he was super consistent at the end. I'm hopeful that the momentum can carry over to this year and that the Clash was just a one-off. It's nothing like any of the other tracks. It's a track that they sucked at last year. They sucked at again this year. It shouldn't be such a big surprise.
There's no other track like it on the schedule, so I'm not.
Obviously, it's disappointing, but I'm not taking much away from that race. You can get all hyped up and everything. I certainly would love to get hyped up based off of what I saw at the Clash, but I physically have to just remind myself that this is just a one-off race and it's an exhibition race. So, Brad Keselowski is my underdog winner pick this season at Talladega.
Nice. A couple really solid picks there. It would be lovely to see both of those.
Yeah, really. I think that there's some guys that won last year, that you wouldn't have expected to win. It's just a matter of, can they replicate that? Because I think you're almost going to need to win again. And can they do that? Because a lot of guys won early in the year last year and then really fell off through the summer months. And if you can't get that early season win and you're at that level of performance, you're not going to point your way in. So just another thing that we have to keep an eye on, obviously, in 2023. But next up is first-time winners. Do you have any? I
think it's important to just kind of list off the drivers that haven't
fair enough.
won yet. I don't know if you have the list in front of you.
It's a very short list.
The drive. I know it's surprisingly short, just because of how many drivers won last year. But we're talking the likes of
Harrison Burton.
For starters, Justin Haley doesn't even count because he's technically won a race in that Spire car. So we're talking first time winners. Noah Gragson, obviously rookie there. The two Spire Motorsports guys of Corey LaJoie, Ty Dillon, who aren't going to win at a normal race, but both are pretty solid super speedway racers. And we saw LaJoie almost get up there and win Atlanta as well. So always a shout there. Todd Gilliland not running every single race, but is still running majority of the schedule. It's unfortunate. I wonder if he could maybe get in one of the Rick Ware cars and still run the full schedule, something like that. But I am very excited to see Zane Smith in 6 races.
Me too. I love Zane.
Yeah, big fan of him. Cody Ware, we can just kind of gloss over that. Sorry, Cody, but one of the more intriguing ones. Gibbs. Well, hold on a second. I'm running down the list here, sir.
All right.
One of the more intriguing ones, Ryan Preece in that 41 car. And then, like you mentioned, Harrison Burton in the 21, and then Ty Gibbs in the 54. That's not including some of the part-time guys like Austin Hill, Chandler Smith running 4 races,
Jimmy
Connor
Johnson
Daly doing the Floyd Mayweather stuff. Yeah, that Jimmy guy, I don't think he's won before. And then, you never know. Travis Pastrana could go out and do it. You see him win that UMP modified race too?
I did hear about it. Yes, I did.
So look at Travis.
Trying to get some oval stuff getting going, but
so I've led off the last couple, so I want you to lead off with this one. Out of all of those, do we have a first time winner this year?
If this track wasn't, I have one.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah. I'm going.
Hit me with it.
I'm going to go with Ty Gibbs to win a race this year.
Okay. Where at?
The kid's fast on a road course. I'm going to say he does it at the Indy road course.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it'll be crunch time by then. Didn't really impress too much in the 2311 stuff when he raced there, but I think Toyota will be able to get up to a level on the road courses where that car can be fast up. I love Chris Gale as a crew chief too. I think it's better than Ben Bayshore. I can tell you that much. So I think Ty Gibbs is going to have a tougher time to begin the season a little bit. I think he showed quite a bit of promise at the Clash though. Raced Chase Elliott pretty clean in that LCQ there. He's got a lot to prove this year. You're taking over the 18 car, the staple at Joe Gibbs Racing. He's got something to prove. And I just think they're too fast. Like, that was an organization that is just, even Truex, I know he missed the playoffs, but he was still like top 5 in points when he didn't make it. It was just extreme circumstances that he missed. He had enough consistent speed to where he should be in the playoffs, but didn't have the win. I think Ty Gibbs will struggle a little bit with the consistency, but I think he will find those races where, wow, he's shining and people will he'll grab people's attention essentially. So I think Ty Gibbs does win a race, and it will be at the Indy road course this season. He'll be one of the first rookies. I know Austin Cindric won last year, but not many rookies win. So this should be a very interesting battle to see if he can win. That's what I'm looking for. It's not even really the rookie of the year battle. It's if he can win in a Joe Gibbs Racing car. That's what I'm looking at from Ty Gibbs this year.
I don't have Ty Gibbs winning in his first season.
Okay.
I was very close to doing it. But the one thing that did hold me back just a little bit is that at a JGR, it always seems like that fourth car is a little bit off the pace versus everybody else. It wasn't necessarily the case last year. Of course, Kyle Busch kind of dropped off as the season went along, but I think that's more extenuating circumstances than anything. But looking previous to that, you have Christopher Bell in that kind of playoff bubble and missing in the first round, stuff like that. Eric Jones always in that kind of mix, maybe grabbing a regular season win or just being on the outside or barely making it in. Daniel Suarez before that. I think obviously Ty Gibbs is going to have all the resources to go out and succeed. I think this year is going to be about trying to rein him in a little bit and try and figure out that consistency. It's about getting up to speed in this car, not about going out and winning races right away. This is a building experience for him. This 100%. Is still a very young driver, a top prospect that is about developing. And very if he, raw. And to be fair, going out and winning races and stuff like that, that'd be awesome. I don't think that should be the outright goal. The outright goal should be to get better as a race car driver. And that might naturally come with wins later in the season. But for Ty Gibbs, it's about progressing as a driver, figuring out how to run mid-pack, figuring out how to save your stuff, all that kind of stuff. We've seen him be excellent in the Xfinity series when he's going up against 6 or 7 different cars. It's a very different beast in the Cup series. I think all that taken into consideration, the JGR history of the fourth car struggling a little bit, a rookie driver always struggling. Even with Austin Cindric winning the first race last year, he wouldn't have made the playoffs if it wasn't for that win. All that taken into consideration, I think it would be, he's certainly the best candidate to win out of the first time, the guys that haven't won yet. But I'm a little hesitant to put that one beside him. I will say Ryan Preece. I think he's a candidate to win. My only hesitation is the tracks that I'd have him winning at, your Martinsvilles, your New Hampshire, stuff like that. Yeah. The flatter, shorter tracks. There's just so many guys he's got to go out and beat. New Hampshire, he's got to go out and beat Christopher Bell or a bunch of different other guys. At Martinsville, you've got to beat like 10 different guys who are excellent at that track. He could go out and do it. He could go out and win a super speedway. He's been really strong there. He's been a pretty solid road course racer in his career as well, with some decent results and underlying numbers with JTG in the past. But that 41 car was so far off. I also like Chad Johnston as a crew chief there, bringing him up from the truck series. He had some previous success with Kyle Larson, all that kind of stuff.
I'm shocked that he hasn't been in the Cup series, honestly, for this long. I think Chad Johnston was great. That was the year that Larson broke out. And
it's just one of those things with Ryan Preece where I need to see it first. I'm just a little too hard pressed to pick it first. All that being said, I do have a first time winner out of all of this.
Yeah.
And I'm going off the board. I'm going way off the board because I'm not even picking a driver. I'm going to say Project 91 wins a race this season. They're running 6 to 8 races as what they said last year. And out of that, it seems like they're running all of the road course races. We saw them have speed right away with Kimi Räikkönen getting up to speed. I think the format change of no more stage cautions and stuff will help the guys coming over to the series, because if they either have wet weather racing or whatever it is, you keep that advantage throughout the race instead of having it go away 2 times throughout the race. Obviously, there's cautions and stuff that can still happen.
Yeah, pit strategy completely is open now.
All that kind of stuff. Trackhouse was also, in my opinion, the most consistent, fastest team on road courses last year. So if you can get a guy that comes in that is an elite talent, steps into the car and can figure out the car right away, I think they're a legitimate challenger to win. And because I have them winning a race, the main basis is that I think Shane Van Gisbergen comes over from Supercars, does one road course race with Project 91, and I think he wins it, whether it's at Chicago or wherever it is. I think Shane Van Gisbergen comes over, does the Project 91, and I think he shows up the field coming over from a very similar type of racing in Supercars with that heavy car on road courses.
Yeah.
I think he comes over and Shane Van Gisbergen could potentially win a race. So
You're crazy, man.
If we're getting spicy,
so nuts.
I'm going to say first time winner, the Project 91 car wins at least one race this season.
If you can get this right.
Your thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, come on. What do you want me to say? That is such a you pick. Like, that's on nobody's radar this year. Like, we have no idea what the Project 91 is going to look like, who's going to be behind the wheel at any of these races. And you have picked them to go out based off of a one-off race last year with Kimi Räikkönen.
No. It's not because of the one-off race.
I know
it's their overall speed on road courses that excites me.
Yeah, it's a risky pick, but
when Kimi Räikkönen wrecked out, he was running top 15, and that was at the beginning of the third stage,
very early in the third stage, or near the end of the second. It was one of
the two. Yeah, and that was after one practice session, a qualifying session, and 2/3 of a race. That Kimi Räikkönen, who love him as a driver, is past his prime, was running top 15 in one of those Trackhouse cars. That's all I'm saying. I think we could see it. Depending on the caliber of driver that they get in this car and the races that they run. I think if they get somebody like Shane Van Gisbergen, who was in his prime, who runs cars, not the same, but heavy stock car type touring cars on road courses, beating and banging and dominates, I think we could see something happen.
I love it. I'd be very, very here for it, Mr. Cushman. Let's get that straight. If we can call back to this moment.
This might be a little bit of wishful thinking, but you know what? Go spicy. Why not?
I like it. I'm very, very here for it. So we'll see what happens, I guess. We will see if you are right. I don't know if I'm going to see anybody else predict that. I'll just say that. But in Kyle Cushman fashion, I wouldn't expect anything less. So next up, we've got the surprise driver of the year. Who's going to maybe come up under the radar that we aren't quite giving enough attention to in the mainstream media that will surprise us?
Do we count as that? You work for TSN, I work for The Score. Do we count as that now?
I think so. Screw it. Why not? We are.
Live long enough to see yourself become the villain, something like that, right?
Yeah, exactly. Surprise driver of the year, Kyle. Who are you looking at? What's standing out to you? What's the driver? It better not be a Project 91 guy. I can tell you that.
No, I already hit you with my surprise of the season.
Yeah, really. The first time when it turned out to be the surprise.
Surprise driver. You can kind of have your own definition for it. For me, I look at it as somebody that
overperform, maybe.
Not necessarily overperform relative to expectations, whether that be consistency, wins, all that kind of stuff. A driver that is kind of seen in one tier and kind of steps up their game to another tier, that kind of thing. And a driver that I think is going to step up into a different tier of driver this season is Bubba Wallace with 2311. I look at his results last year, and the first half of the season was pretty rough. They had like the one top 10 and through the first half of the season. It wasn't great. The second half of the season, they were one of the most improved teams in the Cup Series. And in fact, looking at the differential between first half points through the first 18 races and second half points, so points through the back half of the season, the last 18 races, no driver other than Denny Hamlin had a bigger differential between second half and first half points than Bubba Wallace. They had a 120 point differential. They ranked 24th in the first half of the season in raw points, 13th in the second half of the season. Denny Hamlin obviously had the crazy resurgence in the back half of the season, ranked 18th in the first half of the year and was second in points in the second half of the year. But for Bubba Wallace, I look at all the different factors, whether it's him getting that first win on an oval, crossing the finish line, not having the rain shortened race at Talladega and stuff like that. Not to take away from that win, because everyone knew the circumstances he went out, he got that win, but there's just something different about getting that checkered flag and getting to do the burnout and all that kind of stuff. They proved that they can go out and do it on a mile and a half. Bringing in Tyler Reddick as a teammate, I think, is going to push him even more than somebody like Kurt Busch did, because Kurt Busch, we know what Kurt Busch can do, all that kind of stuff. His career, what he's done with Chip Ganassi recently, you expected Kurt Busch to come in and be better than Bubba Wallace, to be kind of that mentor. Now this is not necessarily contentious, but this is much more of a head-to-head type thing. You're talking about a guy that has been there since day one of 2311 versus the new guy coming in. I don't think that there's going to be anything there, but for Bubba Wallace, there's going to be a lot of pressure on him to go out and perform and kind of show that he should still be the guy at 2311. And finally, I think Toyota is going to be a fantastic organization, manufacturer this season with the lineup they have at Joe Gibbs, with Tyler Reddick coming in there. We already saw, obviously there's not much you can take away from the Clash, but they came out and they performed right away as not just 2311, but Toyota as a whole. I think Toyota is going to be the manufacturer to beat for a lot of this season, as kind of shown by my Christopher Bell pick for most wins. I think Bubba Wallace is going to take a step up from that fringe playoff guy to a legitimate race win contender throughout the season, be a legitimate playoff guy, and we'll see what he can do come playoff time. But Bubba Wallace is my surprise driver of the season.
Likewise. I know I've got some interesting winner picks already that win in the preseason, but those are one-off kind of wins. Yep. I think if you're looking for a guy that's really going to take that next step this year, it is Bubba Wallace. And he was so close. He could have had three wins last year easily. You know, you think back to the first Kansas race that they didn't have the pit road issue. You think to Michigan, if he didn't get caught up in the traffic there and was able to challenge for the win there, still recovered to finish second, but he's got the speed already in a year that Toyota was not at their best by all accounts. So I think if they could figure out their short track stuff too, he excels at those kinds of tracks as well. Yeah. So if he can be a contender on short tracks, if Toyota figures out their stuff there, it should lead to more success earlier on, I believe. You know, you've got that stretch there with Richmond, Bristol Dirt, yeah, sure. And then you've got obviously Martinsville all kind of in a smaller window there. If you can gain a lot of points in those kind of situations, then he'll be looking good over that summer stretch that he started to pick up momentum already at that stage last year. So it's just a matter of consistency for him. Keep your emotions in check, I think, a little bit too. Don't get so down on yourself this year. He had a great end to last year. There's a lot of promise over there at 2311, obviously, for this year. I hope that the competitive nature between him and Reddick doesn't get him down if Reddick starts to beat him or anything like that, because he's a fantastic race car driver and he's got something to prove this year. I think he's going to come out with a little bit of a chip on his shoulder, but like you said, the Clash speed where Toyota wasn't really anywhere last year, the fact that they've made that big of a step and improvement this year to where you could argue they had three of the fastest cars there if they weren't getting beaten and banged out of the way with Wallace, Hamlin, and Truex. It looks pretty good if you're looking at those kind of slower short tracks. So yeah, Bubba Wallace, like you said, and for myself, the surprise driver of the year.
Mile and a halves, really like the Toyotas, really like Bubba Wallace. We saw that
if they can continue that, what they did last year,
watch Michigan out. Is another race that he finished runner-up. Yeah, that's another race that you really like him. New Hampshire also had a really underrated run there, finished on the podium. Martinsville is a race
now after the Clash.
Well, I don't know. That's go away. But all things taken into consideration, he is one of the premier threats on super speedways as well. So all of that,
definitely,
that's a lot of track types that Bubba Wallace could be a threat at if they find that consistency, if they can continue that late season success into this year. That's a team that I'm really watching in the first half of the year, because it's been that first half of the year that has really brought this team down. Last year, they didn't pick up their third top 10 until New Hampshire. And then after New Hampshire, they had a 3rd place there, 8th place at Pocono, 5th place at the Indy Road Course, which is its own thing, and then 2nd at Michigan. That's a 4-race stretch where they completely turned their season around. And of course, like I mentioned, in the second half of the season, had some really, really strong results. If they can just kind of come out of the gate better, this is a team that I think is a shoo-in for a playoff spot. Yeah, that's fair.
I think he's always back in kind of the 15th to 20th range, and he always has to recover for the stage points.
He had a couple of good qualifying effort last year, but yeah.
Yeah, I think Toyota in general last year kind of struggled. So if they can step up there at that speed, because those first stage points are always so crucial. I mean, they really, in a situation like this where the field is so competitive, it's going to come down to stuff like that where you don't think it really matters necessarily on the Saturday. You can recover on the Sunday, but those early stage points can really make or break a driver's season, really. So, and get as many playoff points as you can too. I mean, you got to go for playoff points whenever you can get them. I don't care what the strategy may look like. In my opinion, you got to go for those playoff points when you can get them, and then the rest will figure itself out as the race goes on, unless it's obviously an obvious choice where you have to pit or whatever. But anyways, surprise driver of the year, Bubba Wallace. Biggest disappointment. It's always a category that you always feel bad giving it to somebody because it's so premature towards the season. Like, who do you think is going to suck this year or not going to meet our expectations? It's a harsh category. And unfortunately, my guy has probably been in it the last 2 of the last 3 years. So I don't like this category one bit, but biggest disappointment, Kyle. What are you thinking?
This is a tough one. I don't want to do this. It could bite me big time because this is a driver that could go all the way to the championship 4 and be a legitimate threat there. My biggest disappointment this season is Kevin Harvick.
Oh my God.
I think.
You think it's going to be a terrible retirement?
I don't necessarily think it's going to be a terrible retirement, but SHR has clearly fallen off a little bit the last couple of years.
Yeah.
That's without question. They've gone from being a team that can win 9 races in a season and be so dominant that people were upset that Kevin Harvick wasn't in the championship 4, to a team that is barely scratching and clawing to get 2 cars in the championship in the playoffs.
Playoffs, yeah.
Let alone deep into the playoffs. I just think that there are 2 ways that this is going to go for Kevin Harvick this year. It's either going to be the give a you-know-what meter is so low that he just kind of goes out and doesn't care and wins races and has a great time and has a great playoff run and rides into the sunset awesome, or he's so over it with this car, everything with NASCAR, that kind of stuff, that it just kind of doesn't fall their way and the pieces don't fall and SHR still doesn't have their speed. He gets frustrated mid-season and it just kind of falls apart. And I think that's it's going to be one of the 2. I just can't see it being another season where it's like they have some good runs, they have some bad runs, they win a race here, they win a race there, and they kind of have a decent season, they make the second round, they lose out. Oh, well. I just can't see it being that kind of season for Kevin Harvick. It's just going to be one of the 2 extremes. I really think it's either going to be the give a you-know-what meter is so low that he just goes out and does his thing, wins races, shuts people up, doesn't care what people think of him, rides into the sunset in the playoffs, and then goes into the booth. Or he's just kind of done with the racing side of it. He's trying to get through this season and it just kind of falls apart. And I think it's going to be tough with how many young guys are in the series now, nipping at the heels of all these top drivers, trying to pull wins away. I could see a potentially winless regular season. And as a result, with a lot of guys other than him getting wins, maybe knocking him out of a playoff spot. One of the key things that stood out to me in looking at all the Harvick retirement stuff is that he considered it for this season and he didn't because of sponsor obligations. And that is a big worrying sign for me over his, I don't want to say commitment level because it's a race car driver. You're always committed, but the level of just going out and trying to be that top tier driver, if there's any doubts of retirement and stuff, it's the age-old tale of the driver. As soon as the retirement thought goes in, they're done. I don't think it's quite that to that extent, but I think Kevin Harvick is going to be a driver to watch this year because I think his season's going to go one of 2 ways. The difference for me, just to mention for Martin Truex Jr., is kind of the things we've heard over the offseason where Truex considered retirement, but looked at the speed that they have, that team, and is rearing to go. And everything we've heard from him is that we're going to go out, we're going to dominate, we're going to show everybody what we're got. I haven't quite seen that same level from Kevin Harvick in terms of comments and stuff. Yeah, that's why I have him as my biggest disappointment, because I think it's going to go one of two ways. And just with the field and competition, everything like that, I think it might go the more disappointing route.
Let me ask you this.
Yeah.
Do you think that the impact of the guys that we grew up watching, you've got Jimmy Johnson, Dale Jr., Matt Kenseth, all of these guys that, were the face of the sport for a large part of our youth, and them going out kind of terribly, or, definitely not anywhere near their standards. Do you think, specifically to Jimmy Johnson, do you think that has any impact on your decision in terms of how you view like a retirement year, when they know that this is the end of it for them, and then the racing just kind of comes secondary? It's more about enjoying it rather than trying to prove something.
It's less about that specifically, although that is a factor, and more just about aging curves in general in sports. Like this is a thing that has been studied to death in hockey and basketball and football and all these different sports. We know how aging curves work. In certain sports that are like hockey, for example, we've learned just through aging curves and studying these things through statistics that players actually peak more 23, 24 years old, and not the 30 years old that is the player's quote unquote prime that we always thought previously. That's not the case. Obviously, in racing is very different. I think the
it's like 38.
It was 39. Like 38, 39 is like the peak season that Motorsports Analytics always talked about, the age 39 season. Kevin Harvick's quite a bit past that age 39 season. So just looking at aging curves and stuff like that alone, I have some reservations over that. Obviously, the Jeff Gordon retirement season is everyone's goal.
Yeah,
that's kind of more the anomaly than it is the rule. So it's definitely a factor, but for me, it's more about aging curves in general than it is specifically the retirement tour stuff.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay. Well, I feel bad that I know I have to go after all that. Oh my God. My biggest disappointment for this season will be Daniel Suarez.
Okay.
I think he's a candidate to fall back this year. He won at Sonoma. I don't know if they're going to be able to replicate that. And I just don't know if he has enough speed elsewhere to compete against some of the bigger teams if they get their act together. And I think there's some other guys, if they start to take the Trackhouse resurgence or, the amount of speed that they gained last year, if there's some guys that were not quite at that par, but they take that next step this year, I think Suarez is a guy that could be on the fringes of a playoff spot. And I ultimately have him missing the playoffs. That is why I have him as a biggest disappointment. I think Suarez is a good driver. He can be good on his day. I think he's pretty well-rounded. To be honest, he can be a bit inconsistent for sure, one week to the next. I'm just so hesitant. I love Trackhouse, but I'm hesitant on if they can keep that speed going for another season like they did last year, to be the fastest car, basically, it seemed like everywhere, but he was secondary to Ross Chastain. And they did not win a lot of races last year. They only won
Trackhouse
3 as an organization.
To win on a mile and a half or like a regular non-super speedway or anything. Oval.
Yeah, exactly.
Road course and super speedway.
Yeah, and that's what gives me pause, is that lack of speed against the major tracks that you will need to succeed in the playoffs, especially. I just don't know if Suarez has enough. Obviously, what happened last year, he could have made it to the round of 8 if he wasn't for the steering pump failure at the Roval. But it's just last year was mechanical failures. That's what bit a lot of people last year. So we'll see if that continues maybe this year, if they figured out some of that stuff. Specifically, Bristol was a chaotic race in the playoffs last year. I hope teams have probably figured that out, but Suarez is going to be the guy that I'm looking at. Just seems like a candidate for that, because he has it before the past year at Trackhouse. He was a fringe playoff guy in even SHR equipment and Gibbs equipment. Of course, that was his rookie year, but nonetheless, I think that not going to be up to speed with some of these other guys when I look at who they've got in their lineup. So Suarez misses the playoffs and therefore is my biggest disappointment. It was a tough one. There was a toss up between him and another guy, but I gave it to Suarez.
Alrighty, let's do this next one quick because I think it's a fairly obvious one unless you've gone a little bit off the board with this one. Biggest bounce back, I believe, is next.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Shall I go or
I'll take it first quickly.
Okay.
How is it not Martin Truex Jr.? Right? How is it not? Unless you go for like a different pick or not the obvious pick. How is it not Martin Truex Jr.? He missed the playoffs, had a disappointing playoff run. They didn't show enough speed versus what I thought they would. But this is a team that was top 5 through up until the playoffs started in regular season points.
Yeah.
Every year other than last year, that's a playoff team. But they missed. And it kind of fell apart after that. We've kind of seen over the offseason, like I just mentioned, they sound rejuvenated. They sound ready to go. Martin Truex Jr. isn't thinking about the retirement thing. He's thinking about winning races. And we already saw him win a race at the Clash. They got that taste again. I think we're going to see a season from Martin Truex Jr. with that kind of Toyota type. I don't want to say resurgence because they were pretty solid last year, but almost dominance that I think we could see from the Toyota stable of every single driver being a legitimate threat. Martin Truex Jr., I think we're going to see at least a couple of wins from him this year. And I think we're going to see him back as a championship contender. Like we saw him for most of last season until he didn't win a race in the regular season and missed the playoffs.
Yeah. I don't have Truex as my bounce back. I think he's just kind of
it's a little too obvious. Yeah,
it's too obvious.
That's right.
It's going to seem biased. All right, I'm picking Kyle Busch.
No. It's a fine pick,
but it's a pick that I honestly believe in for a lot of different factors. I do like the Randall Burnett pairing with him. Everywhere Randall Burnett has gone so far, he's won. It seems he's made Tyler Reddick much better. I don't know if we could have ever expected what Tyler Reddick was able to get out of both the Junior Motorsports 9 car, the RCR2 car for his Xfinity Championship, and then, of course, for his 2 years at RCR in the Cup Series, wasn't too shabby. And they won 3 races last year.
Probably should have won a lot more.
Super, super fast. And honestly, you know, if Toyota gets their stuff together, I think Truex is obvious because the tracks that they struggled at, he's usually
just
very
because
good at.
like he missed the playoffs, like
also,
it's so
but like
yeah.
But where Toyota's weaknesses were, that's where Truex's strengths are as a driver, in my opinion. Like the short tracks, Richmond, he's been super dominant. Was nowhere really last year in terms of the competitive speed we're looking for. Martinsville was always a candidate to win there, at least for the last 3, 4, 5 years. Wasn't even close to that, really. It felt like this year. Or 2022, and then the road courses. We always thought of him and Chase Elliott.
I don't see Truex as the road course guy anymore. It's been a long time since he's been a legitimate threat on a road course.
Fair enough, but I do think that had something to do with it. 19 car was just lacking overall. Yeah. But for Kyle Busch, I think him having fun again, because last year was not fun. A lot of stuff off the track that were clearly distractions. You can't let that not get into your mental headspace. There's a lot of different moving parts there. I think you'll have a larger emphasis put on him in a 2-car organization than a 4-car organization. I think that will help. And I also think just having the ability to go run these other races again, Xfinity Series for 5 races, having to go to do SRX for 2 weeks. I think just those kind of things where he can just let loose a little bit, become a race car driver again, outside of just the Cup Series, just have fun, will be a major factor in how he performs. But he's also out there to prove something and make Joe Gibbs Racing regret that they ever let him go and not renewed his contract and let Ty Gibbs take the seat. So there's a lot to prove for Kyle Busch this year. I think he's a bounce back candidate. I think he gets at least 3 wins because that's the bar you have to set when you look at what the 8-car won last year. And I think Kyle Busch is a great road course racer. If the 8-car can be as fast as they were on road course this year, I think Kyle Busch wins a road course race this year. If they can figure out their short track stuff, because I think that's probably where they lack the most, and that's where Kyle's really, really good, then they will become a really well-rounded team. Their 1.5 mile stuff was obviously very, very fast last year. Just reliability is what bit them in the butt, it seems, quite a bit, especially Kansas comes to mind when they were on the pole, and then they I think blew a right front. So yeah, Kyle Busch is my bounce back driver. It's one of those two. You can't go wrong, honestly.
Well, I wouldn't say you can't go wrong because last year we saw exactly where it can go wrong.
True.
But in terms of the Kyle Busch stuff, I do have a lot more reservations over it than you do. Just because it is still RCR. Fair. It is still a team that has been on the fringes of the playoffs. Yes, that 8-car won 3 races and probably could have won more, but it was also a bit of a roller coaster season where they had a lot of speed in places and weren't able to finish races and stuff like that. And the fun aspect going to a new team, I think that honeymoon phase could end really quickly if they do struggle out of the gate. And I could see that turning pretty sour pretty quickly if it does. So I think there's a lot of potential there, but I think there's also a lot of potential for it to go completely bad.
A lot of risk too.
Yeah. So I'm fascinated to see that. That's one of my biggest storylines to watch this season, Kyle Busch in that 8-car, because it could be something where he goes in there and it's a resurgent RCR and he wins even more races than Reddick did. And he goes out and he's a legitimate championship contender. He could also go there, struggle early on. They don't quite see eye to eye and things just kind of fall apart. There's a lot of ways that this could go sour. So I'm very, very interested to see how that goes. Because right now it's a pretty nice honeymoon phase. It's been a lot of smiling, cheering. Austin Dillon, excited to have him as a teammate. A lot of jovial stuff there. But it's racing. It can always go south pretty quickly. So that's a big one I'm watching this year. A really good pick for Bounceback driver just because of how poor that second half of the season was for Kyle Busch. He would have gone winless if Chase Briscoe didn't wreck Tyler Reddick at the Bristol Dirt Race and would have missed the playoffs and all that kind of stuff.
He's got a streak to keep on the line, too. He could go for the record this year. He could break Richard Petty's consecutive season record with a win. So that's obviously something he's got in his mind, I'm sure, too.
Yeah. Alrighty, let's move on to Rookie of the Year. And I think this one is pretty straightforward, honestly. It's Ty Gibbs, and I don't think it's particularly close.
I completely agree.
I understand there's the storyline of Gibbs versus Gragson, but we're talking about Legacy Motor Club versus Joe Gibbs Racing. And Gragson, I think, is a solid driver, but we saw him take a couple of years to really get up there and be a legitimate contender week in, week out in the Xfinity Series. Yes, he has the Cup Series experience last year, but we're just talking about a different echelon of team. Just look at how kind of far off Ty Dillon was last year as well versus where that I guess what used to be the 18 car, now the 54 was. I just don't think it's going to be particularly close. I could be wrong, but I think Ty Gibbs is just better at every single facet, track that we're going to, team, all that kind of stuff. I don't think this is going to be a particularly close rookie battle.
Yeah, I think people in the media and just fans in general will be let down by this battle. There's a lot of hype going into it because it feels like you have two guys that are big personalities that can have had history in terms of not liking each other.
Legacy Motor Club becomes the kind of track house of last year with the influx of Jimmy Johnson, all that kind of stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Eric Jones is a great guy to lead the team there. It could be a resurgent team, but that being said, last year with Trackhouse, you had one guy top 5, top 6 in points contending for wins, and another guy who was more like 14, 15, 16th in points and getting one win at a road course. Pretty big difference between the two drivers there. If Legacy Motor Club does step up the grid, I think it would be a lot closer to that than in Gragson being that kind of secondary guy quite a bit off of the top guy. So we'll see what happens, but I think some pretty serious reservations. You can't think Ty Gibbs
is going to be worse than the 42 car.
No.
Like it's just not possible.
It would have to go pretty terribly.
I have him winning a race, so I clearly think he's going to win the Rookie of the Year battle. But anyways, regular season champion. Who's gonna get those 15 extra points going into the playoffs and be the guy to beat going into the playoffs? Because the regular season champion, I feel like, has had a bit of a tough go as of late, but except for Kyle Larson. But who are you thinking here? Regular season champ. Consistency is where this really pays off.
Yeah. And consistency is the reason why I'm not going with the guy I was originally thinking of, or the guy that I was kind of considering as the other option. I was thinking about Denny Hamlin for this one because of the way that they finished last year, but the kind of inconsistency at the beginning of last year is a bit hesitant for me. They could go out, they could do it. I'm actually going to pick Kyle Larson for this one. I think having that year of experience with this car, he did win 3 races last year as well. He was technically in the championship 4, just not as a driver with the owner. I think we could see Kyle Larson kind of have that bounce back season in terms of finding a bit more of that dominant form this season. So I will have him as my regular season champion.
The guy you did not go with, I am going with. I think Denny Hamlin gets it.
I am glad I didn't just.
And Larson was the other one I was deciding between. So that's hilarious. But yeah, I think I'm thinking he's going to go back to almost 2021 version Denny Hamlin here with the consistency that he had. Didn't end up getting the amount of race wins, but he was super, super consistent right there with Kyle Larson for a lot of the regular season. And Larson just had the wins that were able to propel him to get that extra 15. But, Toyota is going to be something to watch this year. I really do. They're going to be really good. And, Hamlin's just a candidate for that. I don't think he's ever won a regular season championship though. So I think this would be the first time that he would do that. If I'm not mistaken, but
I think that's right. There was the one year where it was him and Larson going head to head.
Yeah. That was 2021.
Yeah. And
Larson got it.
Yeah. So
no,
I don't think he has.
Chase Elliott usually gets this, but I'm going with Hamlin here to take the reins. And like you said, with how fast that they were at the end of last year, they're a pretty good bet. Yeah. So, alrighty, this is the big
playoff
one.
Picks. We got to rapid fire this, or else we'll take 4 hours to get through these playoff ones.
Absolutely.
Okay. Let's go back and forth. Say drivers, and we'll cross it off the list if we both have. Okay.
Yep. I'll put a check mark.
Okay. A dash, let's obviously start with the guys we have winning the regular season. So Kyle Larson, I assume you have him making the playoff as well.
Yeah. Hamlin, do you have him making the playoffs?
I don't. No, of course I do.
Okay.
Christopher Bell.
Yes. I have got Chase Elliott.
Yep. Next up for me, Joey Logano.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm going to go with Kyle Busch.
Yep.
Thank God.
I'm next. I will say Ryan Blaney.
Yes.
I was going to say, whoa, hold on a second.
I had to try to find him on my list. I had him further down.
Okay.
I am going to go with Ty Gibbs because I have him winning a race.
I don't have Ty Gibbs making the playoffs. So there is our first difference.
Alrighty.
You have Ty Gibbs. I do not. Because you went with one of the guys that you have winning a race to make it in, I will go with one of the guys I have winning a race to make it in, Eric Jones.
I don't have him making it.
Okay.
Sorry, Eric. I want to.
And you call yourself an Eric Jones fan. Come on.
I want to.
Alrighty, who do you got next?
I'm going with Martin Truex Jr. next.
I do too. Ross Chastain.
Yes.
Okay.
I do think he will take a step back this year. I think it's realistic to expect that, just in terms of the overall speed. He may get a couple more race wins, but I don't know if the amount of speed that he's going to have week to week will be there.
Alrighty. Who do you got next?
I'm going to go with Tyler Reddick.
I have Reddick as well.
Okay.
William Byron.
Yes.
Crunch time.
He's a sneaky one, William Byron. I don't know what to think about the 24 because they were good in the playoffs. They sucked in the summer. They were good at the beginning of the year. So this 24 is a toss up.
All right. Right now we've got one difference each. Who do you got next?
Bubba Wallace.
I have Bubba Wallace making the playoffs.
Oh my God.
Next,
how many spots we got left? 3?
3, I think. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Next, I kind of teased it earlier. I have him winning a race this season. I think he wins at Indianapolis at least, if not more. AJ Allmendinger.
I don't have him making it.
Okay.
I just think the road courses is just a bit too much to just bet on. There's a lot of good road races.
I think that's fair.
Is so good, but
I think that's fair. The only thing for me is that running a part-time schedule, he won at Indianapolis. He probably should have won at COTA last year. I think he's so good and has so many opportunities to win at road courses. I think he'll do that. And also, we saw him run pretty well in this next-gen car on road courses as well. I think about what was it, Homestead, that he had that awesome run in that Kaulig car.
I think so. Yeah.
I think that they could be a really solid
Chicago
contender.
Street is the one that I circle because I think that he can adapt quicker than most.
Yeah.
that he could be the one that wins
Chase
that race.
Elliott penciled for that because he wins every single first time new road course. He's won 3 out of or I think he's won 4 out of the 5 or 3 out of the 5, something like that. Anyways, who do you got next?
I have Brad Keselowski because I have him winning a race.
I don't have Brad Keselowski making the playoffs.
Okay.
Next, Chase Briscoe. Okay.
No. He ain't making it. I ain't doing it. He was the other guy I was looking at for biggest disappointment between him and Suarez.
Okay.
I think Briscoe was so close last year to make it to the championship 4, which makes it even more of a reason to put him in to that biggest disappointment. But I have Kevin Harvick making the playoffs in his final year.
I have Kevin Harvick missing the playoffs in his final year.
Oh my God. Oh God.
And my final playoff driver is Alex Bowman.
As do I.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't think I think Blake Harris will be a good addition.
And Bowman always wins at least one race. And I really like that.
Go back Blake into Harris a win somewhere.
Yeah. I mean, so does Kyle Busch. Anyways, 3 differences between the two of us. You have Ty Gibbs, Brad Keselowski, Kevin Harvick making it. I have Eric Jones, AJ Allmendinger, and Chase Briscoe making it.
Man, there's some big names. I was thinking Ryan Preece potentially if he got a win, but I don't know if the consistency will be there. Austin Dillon, I think, could be a shout for points if it gets to that stage.
I think he's got to win a race.
Possibly. Austin Cindric, we left off a Penske car, not making it.
I think he's got to win a road. He's also really solid on super speedways. Obviously, he won the Daytona 500, but really consistent all around.
He's the one guy that I would be a little bit hesitant on. You have Suarez missing it as well.
Yep. I look at what happened last year, the gap between Chastain and Suarez, and he wouldn't have been remotely close to a playoff spot had it not been for that win, just considering how many points you needed to go out and point your way in. I'm hesitant about his ability to go out and close out that win. We saw it on the road course. I haven't seen it yet on the ovals, and I think he's going to have to win an oval race if he's going to go out and make the playoffs. So it was painful to do it. I just couldn't find any spots for him. So
Chris Buescher?
I thought about it. His super speedways last year were pretty underwhelming. He's a pretty good road course guy, but I need to see consistent speed out of RFK before I believe it. Bristol, love him, was great. That's a playoff race though.
Yeah, definitely. Alrighty, those are the playoff guys. I'm not surprised we have 3 differences. That usually is about where it averages out to.
That's about it. And just for some context, last year there were 5 changes between the playoff field. So Almirola, Keselowski, Kurt Busch, Michael McDowell, Martin Truex Jr. missed the playoffs after making it the previous season and were replaced by Chase Briscoe, Ross Chastain, Austin Cindric, Austin Dillon, and Daniel Suarez. So for me personally, I have 4 differences this year. I have Cindric, Dillon, Harvick, and Suarez missing it with Allmendinger, Jones, Truex, and Bubba Wallace stepping in.
Gotcha.
So
should be fun. Alrighty.
I can't wait to see how many of those are wrong.
Me too.
Alrighty. Do you want to do this quick or you want to get into it a little bit?
We can go through it relatively quick.
Okay.
Who you got?
Do you want me to kick this off?
Who's your first guy?
First guy I have is Kyle Larson.
I have him too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hit me with one of yours.
I have Christopher Bell going back there again this year.
I don't have Bell making the championship 4. Instead, I have his teammate, Denny Hamlin.
Oh, he was the guy I was hoping you wouldn't say there.
So wait. So that means you have 2, I have 2, right?
I've got Larson and Bell. You've got
Larson
and Hamlin.
So I'm next.
Yeah. Okay.
Ryan Blaney.
Ooh, I don't have Blaney. I don't have Ryan Blaney. I am going. Oh, man, this is tough. This is really tough. I'm
Okay, while you think about it, I'll quickly say why I have Blaney here.
Yeah.
I think last year, between the Cindric winning the 500, Logano winning the championship, I think there's a lot of Ryan Blaney pressure to go out and kind of drop that, give a meter down and go out and actually win some races and go and show what he can do. He's always been that guy that's right on that edge of making the championship 4. I think he could go out and make the championship 4 this year. I think he's going to have a big season.
Okay.
I considered him for surprise driver.
Yeah. That's a good shout. I'm going to go with Hamlin. I am going to put him in.
Okay. My final guy in the championship 4, Tyler Reddick.
I'm going with the guy that replaced him. I'm taking Kyle Busch to go all the way this year.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Alrighty. Good stuff.
We both don't have Chase Elliott. I am anticipating him to drop off this year. I don't think it's that he'll drop off.
It's just that it's been too many years in a row. Like it's got to end eventually.
Also, yeah, I do agree with that, but he wasn't that good to end last year. I think he lucked into a lot of his wins, and I don't know. That's just me.
I mean, if we're talking about
don't think he was quite
wins.
there. Yeah, I got it. It's just Bristol dirt. I got it. But
it's also
I think he takes a step back this year.
Anyways, yeah, no, step back from winning the most races. So yeah.
Yeah, I think he'll get like 3. But the road courses is where his bread is butter. I think that there's more guys that can compete with him now with this car. Final bit. 3 champions
Crunch
to name.
time.
We'll start up with the trucks because that'll be what's going first. That weekend, I think it's a diminished field this year without KBM.
I don't think that's saying. I think everyone kind of agrees with that, but I think it also makes it a closer field.
True. I think you could see some surprises more this year, honestly. There's some good movement there. Like I think to Christian Eckes to the 19 to a truck that hasn't made the playoffs with Derek Kraus the last couple of years, but I rate Eckes decent. So I think that he could be a surprise kind of guy, if you will, in that equipment to go out there and win.
The young GMS guys.
Tricon Garage.
Yeah, that's a wild card team. Yeah.
We'll see how they do, but you've let it off for a lot of these. I'll go first for the trucks. Okay. I'm going to go with Zane Smith to go back-to-back. I think he's the best driver in that series. I think he's ready for the next level, whether that's Xfinity or if they want to put him into a cup car. If the circumstances go their way, there's a vacant 4 car going to be coming up here very shortly. I wonder if they take a shot at something like that. But Zane Smith is definitely, I think, the guy to beat. He proved it last year, regular season champ there. Finish it off in style with a win, and it really wasn't that close in that championship race. He just had the truck to beat. It seemed like that the entire weekend, and he executed it. So I think he goes back to back. It's very rare to go back to back, but I think that he is the clear favorite, and he's just better than everybody else down there, in my opinion. So he gets the second Truck Series championship of his career.
Because it is so difficult to go back to back, he is a clear favorite. I wouldn't be shocked whatsoever if he goes out and wins it. I'm not going to pick him to go back to back just because of how hard it is to do that.
Yeah.
So I'm going to take the guy that almost beat him for the championship, and that's Ty Majeski. I think having the full season under his belt at ThorSport, kind of becoming that team leader type guy with Crafton kind of dropping off a little bit, Ben Rose dropping off a little bit last year, and having Haley Deegan now as the 4th car there, I think is going to be an interesting team to watch. But Ty Majeski, I think he finally broke through and got those wins at the end of the season. I think he carries that momentum into this year, picked up some of the wins that are kind of vacant from the guys that left the series last year or the teams that have moved and all that kind of stuff. And I think we could see maybe a 1-2 battle at the top of the field between Zane Smith and Ty Majeski.
It's not a bad pick. Not a bad pick. You want to say your
I will just say, frankly, other than those two, I really don't know who's going to be that other kind of couple of contenders. Like, I think it really depends on what GMS brings to the table and what we kind of see out of some of the young guys. And I think Tricon Garage stepping up to be that kind of KBM 2.0 is going to be a very interesting team to watch, because I think Corey Heim has the talent to go up there and contend for a championship. I just don't know if the team is there yet. So,
do you think a KBM or I guess the one truck, the four, do you think Chase Purdy makes the playoffs?
No, I don't. I think there's too many veteran guys in decent equipment versus a guy who showed nothing, frankly, in his career so far, in a solid truck. So that's my thought. Like if I'm picking one of the younger guys, I'm picking one of the GMS young kids to make it instead. But I also think somebody like Matt DiBenedetto in that Rackley truck could make the playoffs.
I'll tell you what, I think Stuart Friesen could be a very good candidate to go up there.
I think he's that number 3 guy right now.
Cusp, man. Like he was always so close to the championship 4. I think this is the year that he could make that. Really, if he's going to go for any year, this would be the year to make it.
Well, and it was the win at Phoenix that booked his ticket to the championship 4 a couple of years, 3 years ago, whenever that was. So if he makes it, you never know.
Never know. Alrighty, Xfinity Series champion, the race that will be decided on my birthday this year. Who are you thinking? Who's going to be the one hoisting the championship? We had the 2 guys in the top 2 in the championship last year leave the series. We also had AJ Allmendinger leave the series. So you got 3 guys there.
A lot of wins to be filled.
Who's going to be the one that steps up and takes it home?
I just want to say I am pumped for the Xfinity Series this year. I cannot wait because the racing is always awesome, but there's a lot of really fun cars in this field. Car driver combos. I'm super excited to see Parker Kligerman back full time in a car that we saw win last year as well. Of course, there was some RCR stuff there and Tyler Reddick and stuff like that. Kligerman is a wheelman. We saw him win in the Truck Series last year.
We both think excited to see that.
But other than that, there's like a lot of really fun things to see.
You got Chandler Smith
in that
Sammy
16.
Smith.
Super exciting.
John Hunter Nemechek over in a full-time JGR car.
And all of those are not my championship picks because I'm taking Cole Custer to win the Xfinity Series championship. What we saw from him in limited schedule last year was unreal.
The 07,
in that SHR-esque car.
Won a race.
And ultimately, I look at what John Hunter Nemechek did in the Truck Series, and he couldn't finish out for that championship. I think he's going to win a lot of races. I think he's going to be that top guy at JGR. But come to that end of the season, I think Cole Custer is going to get the edge of him. Having that experience in those championship 4s previously in the Xfinity Series, obviously it's a different race that they're going to for the final. But I think we could see a monster season from Cole Custer that reminds people of his talent that he just hasn't quite been able to figure out yet at the Cup Series level. Custer is my Xfinity Series champion.
Agree 100% on Cole Custer having a resurgence in his career this year. He was the guy I was debating between winning the championship or not this year with the guy that I ended up picking. I'm saying it actually ends up going to Junior Motorsports in 2023. Josh Berry will win the Xfinity Series championship. Got the much needed experience that he needed this past year at Phoenix. Was definitely the slowest of the 4 cars, obviously, that weekend, but you cannot underestimate how much value is in just making it that far in the playoffs. And he's proven that he can go out there and get that kind of a shock win on not a short track. He can do it on a 1.5 miles if he needs to. And Junior Motorsports has got, I think, on an upward trajectory. Noah Gragson left them in a fantastic spot. I think he lifted that entire organization up, especially this past year. Now you've got Brandon Jones in the 9 car. We'll see how much of an impact that may have. You're losing a guy like Luke Lambert as well, part of that organization. They've shuffled around the crew chiefs for all of their cars.
Speaking of, I really like the addition of Marty Lindley back with Sam Mayer. I think that's a really intriguing duo.
Yeah. He's a guy that you got to watch this year. If he doesn't end up in victory lane, huge disappointment for Sam Mayer. Well,
that's the thing. I think that he's going to have that kind of, this guy's real good season. So
yeah, just taking it a little bit longer to get to the party, but he'll show up to the party hopefully this year. But I'm going with Josh Berry. I think Cole Custer is going to win the most races in the Xfinity Series this season. If it was at Homestead, it's not at Homestead. And that is why I have to look at Phoenix and whose background it kind of shapes. Justin Allgaier, I'm convinced, will never win an Xfinity Series championship. Like the guy is
speaking of the track that they're going to finish off the championship, don't sleep on Chandler Smith potentially going on a championship run.
Yeah. I'm very curious to see how he does in an Xfinity Series car.
The thing that if he was in a JGR car, I'd probably have him winning the championship straight up. But the colleague stuff, I just can't get a good feel of what level of
they're super consistent with AJ, but are they going to be the same?
AJ's always been the guy that's gone out, won races, and been at the top. Ross Chastain, who we've seen develop into the driver that he is now, didn't win any races in that colleague car, but was very, very consistent and was top 3 in points and all that kind of stuff. And obviously we had our back and forth over wins versus consistency.
Just brings me back.
I know because you giggled for that one. Don't forget he was one of your biggest disappointment picks back in the day.
No, I don't forget that. Oh, man.
But last year there was such a big gap between Daniel Hemrick and Landon Castle versus AJ Allmendinger. And yes, Allmendinger is obviously the best driver of the 3. But Hemrick had some really consistent, solid runs in RCR equipment. And when we won his championship in JGR, Landon Castle wasn't far off from that. And I think he's a really solid driver. And I'm disappointed to not see him be able to run the full campaign this season because I think they would have really stepped up. But man, I just can't get a good feel as to whether they're like a 3rd or 4th team in this series and had a Cup Series level driver in that car that kind of brought up their program, because Justin Haley didn't win on any ovals and stuff either. He was a super speedway guy.
Yeah.
Or if they're one of those top teams and maybe have some secondary drivers in those extra cars. I think Chandler Smith is going to show us kind of what their level is this year. So I'm very excited to see that.
Yeah, I mean, adding in another SHR car is like adding almost a Penske car back into the fold.
I agree.
In this Xfinity series.
I think it's like adding another SHR car because the guy that's currently in the SHR car wasn't very good.
Yeah, fair enough. But it's just like having that top tier Ford back in the series. Yeah. So just when you think the Xfinity series is losing some talent and Ty Gibbs and Noah Gragson
good.
And you just the last 3 to 4 years, man, they just keep turning over talent, and we'll see who maybe that next breakout star is this year, whether that's Chandler Smith, Sammy Smith, John Hunter Nemechek, reminding people how good
Sam
he
Mayer,
is. And Sam Mayer. Yeah, those are the guys that I'm really keen on.
I think Parker Kligerman can get up there
Brandon
and make
Jones
some
in
noise.
the 9 car. What can he do in that? I know you're not that curious on it. I am, because that 9 car is championship contender material every year.
I don't know how we glossed this over. The most contentious debate in TGF history. Brett Moffitt is running the full season in a Ford in the AM Racing 25, stepping up to the Xfinity Series level. So that is the most us thing. The fact that was a debate.
We had that big of a debate on that. Yeah.
And that was right.
Good times. So. Good times. Brett Moffitt proved me right 3 years later.
Did he?
Yeah, maybe not. I thought he was going for the KBM truck, but after I said I don't think you need to go back down to the truck series, so I don't know what I'm thinking.
Yeah. Alrighty, let's do the
last one.
You go first.
Remind everybody who your championship 4 is first off.
Larson, Blaney, Hamlin, and Reddick.
Bell, Larson, Kyle Busch, Hamlin.
Who do you got?
I am going with a first-time Cup Series champion. Christopher Bell gets it done. I think that those playoff wins and those winning in the playoffs is a different beast. No matter how you do it, it's very, very rare. And what we saw this past year with 3 non-playoff guys winning in that first round, I think is not going to happen whatsoever this year. I think you're going to see the playoff guys take that next step. And a lot of that was mechanical stuff. When you look at Darlington, it could have been, I guess, Truex, but Kyle Busch could have won that one. And then Bristol obviously was just the survival of the fittest. If you had your parts tightened up the most, really, it seemed in that one. Credit where credit's due to Chris Buescher, obviously, but there were a lot of guys that you would normally see at the front at Bristol that were nowhere near because of issues that were out of their control behind the wheel, more had to do with the car. So something like that, I think that's where Bell can execute in the playoffs, get those early wins. And he had so much speed last year. It's hard to believe that he's going to take a step back. I think this is just the beginning for him. And he's getting into those years where a lot of guys start to step up their game. And Christopher Bell could have won the championship at Phoenix, if not for the pit road miscue. I think he could have been there with Logano in that final run, but losing all that track position like that definitely hurt them. So I think whoever wins that Las Vegas race, like Logano did this past year, it's a huge benefit, obviously, to have that most amount of time to prep. Because when I was there, you could see that they were the most organized team, and just being on the ground like that, you can just get a better sense of that rather than just reading a tweet on how their 10-lap average was. They executed their time to perfection, and then they went out there. Were also fast in the long run, but then they won the pole and made it a runaway championship for Joey Logano. I think Christopher Bell, if they can figure out their short track stuff a little bit better this year for Toyota, that Christopher Bell is the favorite to win that championship going in there, and he's going to beat the competition. So Bell wins it over Larson, Kyle Busch, and Denny Hamlin.
Love it. I was very, very close to putting Bell in my championship 4 again. I just don't quite see that final round working out the same way, whether it's the luck or the win or whatever, with the guys that I have making it through. Just kind of thinking about it, like Larson is kind of a shoo-in to win Homestead at this point, although Reddick probably has something to say about that. Vegas is kind of that interesting one. You can see, I think Blaney could go out there and maybe win a Martinsville and win his way in, Vegas. That kind of thing. Vegas is kind of that more open one. And in this case, maybe Hamlin goes out and wins that or something like that, or Reddick with the 1.5 mile package. But yeah, that Vegas win, we've seen it time and time again, shows up big. For me, my Cup Series champion this year, go big or go home, right? That's the saying.
Mm-hmm.
Tyler Reddick wins the championship in his first season with 23-11. Look, I really like Toyota this season. I really, really like Tyler Reddick as a driver. And I think that combination is going to be very, 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 very scary for teams if they can kind of figure it out together. I think that there might be a little bit of growing pains off the start to maybe figure out what kind of everybody likes there. But when we're talking about Toyota, this is a manufacturer that every single driver in that garage can go out, win, and potentially be a championship threat, with maybe the exception of Ty Gibbs. Although if he figures out this car,
if you feel a little spicy,
But Tyler Reddick, we talked about it last year in our playoff preview when you had him going all the way and winning the damn thing. But the playoffs look really good for
nice
him.
For him. Yeah,
it's because he is so well-rounded as a driver. And for me, the big thing is last year he could have led the series in wins had he had more consistency from his car, whether it be mechanical issues, blown tires, that kind of stuff, or some things that were kind of self-inflicted as well. He could have gone out there and truly dominated in terms of the win total last year and didn't necessarily. If 23-11 can figure out some of those bugs and help either not have those same mechanical issues or help Reddick kind of rein it in a little bit at times, this is one of the most talented drivers in the Cup Series right now. We're not talking about potential, being in a potential guy down the road. This is one of the budding stars right now. With that combination with Toyota, with a team that is significantly on the rise, in my opinion, when you look at their first season with Bubba Wallace, their second season with Bubba Wallace, and adding Kurt Busch and all the different weird things that they had to deal with there. This is a team that is significantly on the rise. I really like what they're doing. And I think Tyler Reddick could go all the way. So Tyler Reddick is my championship pick for this year. I just look at the way that the playoff shake out. I look at that final round, and if he gets to that round of 8, I really like his chances of making it with that Toyota speed on the 1.5 miles, and obviously Homestead being another chance there. If he can make it to the show, I think he could win the show. So Tyler Reddick is my championship pick.
Tell you, that would hurt a lot if you were to do that, because that would have been the car that Mr. Kyle could have gone into if he wanted to, potentially. But it's a good pick. There's a reason I picked Reddick, not just because of how much speed the RCR showed last year. It's because he's a really good driver, and they got a really good driver behind the wheel of that 45 car this year. So
what I will
it would
say,
be quite the story though if like a third-year team can go out there and win it. Like Trackhouse obviously made it.
They almost did it last year, and it's as a second-year team, or whatever it was. But what I will say is my runner-up is Ryan Blaney, and I think if he makes the championship 4, he's a legitimate threat to win the championship.
Super good there.
Every single time we go there for the final season, he seems like he's the top finishing non-championship 4 guy. Whether
he's
it's
a
last
certified
year
number 1
finishing
overall
second,
pick for our TGF draft when we get down to that.
Unless he's in the championship four, it might get a little bit spicy. But no,
we both don't have Logano. We both don't have Chase Elliott, and we both don't have Ross Chastain. That is 3 of the 4. And you don't have Christopher Bell. So you don't have any of the last year's championship 4 in your championship 4. That's pretty unprecedented where there's that much turnover.
What I will say is, if it wasn't for Ross Chastain's final move, Denny Hamlin would have been in that mix. Kyle Larson was in the championship 4 just on the owner side, not on the driver side. So yes, it's a lot of turnover year over year, but in terms of how close the margins were last year, it's actually not that different when you look at Hamlin should have been in the championship 4, if not for the most unprecedented move of all time. Yeah. Kyle Larson was literally a championship 4 car. Ryan Blaney, his teammate, was in the championship 4. All that kind of stuff. I think we're in for a fantastic year. I think there's going to be a lot of changes back and forth between certain guys figuring out this car a lot quicker than others. I think there's going to be less parity, but also closer racing and still a little bit of parity at times. I don't know. It's a very interesting season coming up. I think the top teams are going to be the top teams a little bit more than they were last year, but there's going to be those wins to pick off here and there that are going to spice up the season. And when it comes to playoff time, you just truly never know what's going to happen. Another guy that I considered tossing in here was William Byron, but again, that summer stretch was a little too inconsistent for me. I need to see that full season before I believe it, but their playoffs was really, really fast. There's legitimately 10 different guys that can make the championship 4, maybe even more. Like this is I'd say about 10. Field.
You got a lot of options for playoffs, but 10 real championship 4 guys that you could see going deep. That's reasonable. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. That is our NASCAR Cup Series and Xfinity and Truck Series to a certain extent season preview / prediction show. We hope you enjoyed. Lots of fun to always do this, and we will be obviously back next week to tee up the Daytona 500. The Great American Race should be an exciting one to see who comes out with. Can they get their first one?
Travis Pastrana.
There's a lot of good names that are going to be going in for those duels, man. Like
the duels are going to be
there's something
on
the line. There's something finally on the line with those. Lots of cool things going on this year. So stay tuned. We'll of course be back, like I said, for Daytona. But any final thoughts, Kyle, before we wrap up this season prediction show?
Nothing too much. Just that I'm very, very excited to be back doing the season preview stuff. Obviously, last year we started much later in the season before the playoffs with school and everything being weird. It's crazy to think that that's what was going on this time last year. It feels like decades ago, honestly. But no, I'm super, super excited to be back doing the season preview stuff. Looking forward to the season. I think it's going to be a very, very fun season of racing across all 3 levels of the National Touring Series. And then we'll see if any prospects kind of come up on the ARCA scene and stuff like that. So
we'll be going to North Wilkesboro this year, baby. Like that is going to be an unbelievable weekend. Chicago Street. Who knows what's going on there?
It is actually
2 bucket list things. If you're going to a race this year,
going back to the Milwaukee Mile and stuff like that too. Like there's going to be some fun stuff this year. So really looking forward to talking it through all season long. It's going to be a lot of fun. And I don't know, might have a little fun stuff on the side as well on the score. We'll see how things go on that front, but that's a little tease for you.
Well, Canadian race fans, where you can find all that good stuff as well on the NASCAR.
Not on TSN, at least for the Clash qualifying.
Don't bring those mentions up. Thanks. But glad you guys enjoyed.
Me and your bosses have beef, so I have to continue it.
Yeah,
you don't talk.
I'm staying out of it. But anyways, hope you guys enjoyed this preseason episode. Make sure to hit like and subscribe if you did. All the links to our social channels will be in the description. We can try and start those back up for this season and keep all that good stuff coming. So for this episode, I've been Lukas Wacker. He's been Kyle Cushman. Signing off for now. We will talk to you next week to tee up the Daytona Speed Week and the Daytona 500. See you guys later.